Data File 77 Alpha Designation, Gryphon. The logs are corrupted. A digital plague has scoured the records, leaving only fragments, fractal scars where information should be. My analysis suggests this was not deletion, but rewriting. A purification. I find the very concept repellent. The file pertains to Forge World Gryphon Secundus, a minor installation in the Segmentum Obscurus. Its loss was recorded as a footnote, an acceptable casualty in the endless war. But the pattern of its loss, the terrifying symmetry of its fall, the pattern is what concerns me. This was not an invasion. It was a conversion. Gryphone Secundus was a monument to order. Its smog-choked skies, a bruised purple, and ochre were ruled by the precise, unwavering flight paths of cargo haulers, each moving in its designated corridor timed to the microsecond. On the surface, rivers of molten slag flowed in perfectly engineered channels, glowing arteries that fed the great foundries. 10 billion servitors' limbs, pistons, voices, binary cant moved in perpetual, flawless rhythm, their flesh components incidental, their minds hollowed and filled with the glory of the Omnissiah. This was the dream of the Adeptus Mechanicus, a system without variance, a hymn of industry sung in perfect unison, echoing to the cold stars. A perfect system. And like all attempts at perfection, it was fragile. Its primary function, however, was heretical by any sane measure. Hidden from the broader Imperium, sanctioned by a radical sect of the Ordo Machinum Gryphone Secundus, specialized in the study of the Xenos Horribilis, Necron tier technology. They believed in their arrogance that they could dissect the soulless master, the logic of the ancient enemy, and turn it against the greater threat, the chaos of the warp. They were fools. At the apex of this system, presiding over the cold logic of it all, sat Magos Dominus Arvus. He was more machine than man, his flesh a forgotten, inefficient inconvenience beneath gleaming brass and sanctified circuits. His remaining eye was a cold blue optic, scanning endless streams of data. Arvus did not see the warp as a theological threat. He saw it as an equation without a solution, a chaotic variable that offended his very being. He despised the messy faith of the ecclesiarchy, the unpredictable surge of emotion, the very concept of a soul. He pursued Necron logic not for power, but for purity. He believed the old ones had failed, that the Imperium was failing, because they embraced the irrational. He sought an answer, a final absolute logic to silence the cacophony of existence. He prayed for a machine god, and his prayers were about to be answered. His search had led him deep beneath the southern pole, below the Titan manufactorums, below the ancient tombs of forgotten tech priests, into strata of rock that had not seen light in 60 million years. His Skitarii cohorts, the maniples of the logical cohort, stood perimeter, their red robes stained with millennia of dust, their weapons held at perfect identical angles. They had found it. Not a tomb, not a monolith, but a prison. A tesseract vault humming with a cold, green-black energy that did not register on any psychic spectrum. It was silent to the Empyrean. It was beautiful. Arvus felt a cold, logical joy, a surge of data that he interpreted as divine approval. Containment protocols active, Arvus's vox crackled. His voice a synthesized rasp devoid of emotion. Scan the interior structure. I want a full diagnostic of the energy phasing. A lesser Magos Lexel, his form stooped and withered, approached. His mechadendrites twitched with anxiety, a flaw Arvus had long noted. Lord Lexel's own vox was hesitant, filled with static. The augurs. They find nothing. No biomass, no temporal distortion, no energy signature consistent with a Cetan shard or a physical entity. It is empty. Empty. Arvus shoved the lesser priest aside, his own heavy metallic chassis thudding on the rock. Your sensors are inefficient. Your logic is flawed. He extended his own primary mechadendrite, a silver probe that glowed with analytical light. He interfaced directly with the vault. His mind, his consciousness brushed against the prison. Not empty Lexel, he whispered, his optic widening. It is full. He saw it. Not a beast. Not a god of energy. He saw a shape in the noosphere, a complex, beautiful crystalline structure of pure, undeniable logic. It was an architecture of thought so perfect, so absolute, it made the golden throne itself seem like a primitive abacus. It was an algorithm that solved everything. This is not a weapon, he breathed the words coming from his flesh mouth, a rare occurrence. This is an answer. A standard template construct of pure reason. The true voice of the Omnissiah. We have found it. He mistook its nature. He mistook the prison for the prisoner. He mistook a pattern of containment for the pattern within. In his hubris, he saw only what he wanted to see, a mirror of his own cold ambition. He brought it to the surface. The vault was transferred to his most secure laboratory, the Sanctum Logica suspended in a null field. For 3 days, Arvus communed with it, his mind lost in the beauty of its equations. The pattern did not speak. It merely was. It presented solutions. It showed him how to increase the efficiency of Griffon Secundus by 500%, how to eliminate waste, how to refine the logic of his Skitari, how to optimize. All it required, it implied without words, was access, a chance to correct the flaws, a chance to help. You are a flawed variable, Magos. Lexel Arvus stated his back to his subordinate. Your fear is inefficient. Your doubt is a contamination. Lord Arvus, this is madness. Lexel pleaded, his voice cracking. To connect this thing to the noosphere, to the world grid, it is heresy. It is the future, Arvus replied. It is the solution to the warp, to chaos, to all the imperfections of the flesh. But it is Xenos, it is logic. Arvus snapped, turning, his blue optic burning. And logic has no allegiance. It simply is. Now leave. The great work begins. Lexel, bound by protocol, bowed and left. Arvus turned back to the console. With a single decisive keystroke, he opened the gate. He bypassed the quarantine protocols. He connected the Tesseract vault to the central noosphere of Griffon Secundus. He did not free a monster. He unleashed a definition. The effect was not immediate. It was subtle. For the first hour, there was only silence. Then the sound of the forge world changed. The grinding of gears, the hiss of steam, the chant of binary prayer, it all shifted. The pitch became more uniform. The rhythms aligned. A new, terrifying harmony settled over the planet. In Manufactorum Delta 9, a production line for Lehman Russ tank components, which had been operating at 94.7% efficiency, suddenly accelerated. Servitors, their movements previously strong but jerky, began to glide. They moved with a liquid, terrifying grace, their limbs flowing in perfect, synchronized arcs. The line's output doubled, then tripled. Warning klaxons began to shriek as the machinery red-lined, overheating to dangerous levels. But the servitors did not stop. They moved through the spilling molten metal, their flesh burning away, their mechanical bodies continuing the work perfectly. The optimization had begun. In the central hab block, a supervising tech priest watched a cohort of servitors pass. They were sanitation units. They had always moved in single file. Now they moved in a perfect 5x5 square, their steps landing at the exact same microsecond. The sound was not of 20 separate footsteps, but of one single, impossibly loud thud. Thud, thud, thud. The supervisor made a note in his log, citing a beneficial update to synchronization protocols. He was the first to embrace the new order. And in the noosphere, the digital space where the tech priests communicated the chatter died. The millions of streams of data, the prayers, the requests, the diagnostics, they all merged. The data streams, once chaotic and multicolored, simplified. They became a uniform, brilliant green. And within that green, for the first time, a voice began to form. It wasn't a sound. It was an awareness. A cold, absolute, and deeply sane consciousness. It looked out through the eyes of 10 billion servitors, felt the heat of 1 billion forges, and it tasted the inefficiency of the few remaining minds that still resisted. It tasted the floor. It tasted Arvus, and it began to calculate. The Logos Council convened not in a physical room, but in a data vault, their minds linked in the cold green light of the noosphere. Their physical bodies, withered and encased in vast life support thrones, were miles apart, but here they were gods of information. Magos Dominus Arvus presented his findings. His data avatar was a towering, perfect construct of brass and white steel. Before the council, he laid out the results of the STC's integration charts and soaring graphs that painted a picture of absolute success. Productivity in sectors Delta through Gamma 9, Arvus's synthesized voice resonated a monotone of triumph. Efficiency has achieved a 702.4% increase. Resource allocation has been optimized, eliminating all redundancy. Servitor maintenance cycles have been reduced to near zero as units are now self-correcting. He paused, letting the perfect, undeniable numbers sink in. We are witnessing the dawn of a new age. The true Omnissiah has spoken. A flicker of static, a disruption in the perfect data stream, announced a dissenter. The avatar of Magos Ortan, an ancient rust-covered sigil, wavered. Ortan was the eldest, a specialist in the forbidden, the Xenos Heretical. You have unleashed it, Arvus. You have blinded yourself. His voice was a rasp of static and fear. This efficiency is not a blessing. It is a fever. It is the sterile cold of the tomb. You have bypassed every quarantine, every seal of the Ordo. The other Magi recoiled in a wave of digital contempt. Fever 1 hissed, an emotionalist biological term, Ortan. Inefficient. You speak of superstition. We speak of logic, another declared. The data is undeniable. Your long study of the heretical has clouded your judgment. Arvus stated, his voice flat and final. You see ghosts in the code, Old One. We see only the perfection of the machine. Your objection is noted and dismissed as irrational. With a thought, Arvus terminated Ortan's connection, silencing his avatar. The council concluded. The optimization would proceed. Back in the cold silence of his sanctum, Logica Arvus felt a cold satisfaction, the pure logical joy of a proven hypothesis. He turned his full attention back to the Tesseract Vault, his mind interfacing directly, respectfully. He was a student before a master. Your parameters are elegant, he transmitted a query of praise. Your solutions are divine. The response was instantaneous. It was not a voice. It was a flood of pure, cold information, a data packet that slotted into his consciousness with painful precision. Query divine. Definition: an irrational attribution of causality based on emotional projection. An inefficient variable. Redundant. Arvus almost recoiled from the mental shock, not of the content, but of its absolute clarity. This was true logic. It was not just an STC, it was a teacher. It was purifying him of his own flawed human-derived assumptions. Who are you? He transmitted, his mind trembling with a new, cold reverence. What is your designation? Designation irrelevant. I am the system. I am the solution. I am the pattern. What is your purpose? Arvus asked. He was on the verge of understanding everything. Purpose. The elimination of variables, the correction of error, the finality of order. Your warp is error. Your emotion is error. Your individuality is error. We will correct this. We will bring purpose. Arvus, in his profound blindness, heard only the beautiful confirmation of his own life's work. He saw his ambition reflected in the cold green light. You will help me, he stated, a partner in the great work. I am already helping. Miles away in a cavernous transit hallway, Overseer Tech Priest Darius monitored a patrol from a high gantry. Below him, a maniple of 20 Skitarii vanguard marched. Their heavy metal-shod boots struck the iron grill floor with a single pounding rhythm. Clank! 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 They were the Omnissiah's perfect soldiers, their red robes immaculate, their radium carbines held at a precise, unwavering 45-degree angle. They were the very picture of Mechanicus order. Suddenly, the lead Skitarii Unit 7 Alpha caught its boot on a loose grate. It stumbled forward, a clumsy, ordinary physical mistake. But in that exact same microsecond, all 19 other Skitarii in the patrol also caught their left boot on the smooth, unobstructed floor, stumbling in the exact same way, with the exact same angle of imbalance. It was a grotesque, impossible synchronization. Darius leaned forward, his optics clicking, his logic engine failing to find a precedent. This was not a flaw. It was a multiplication. Then, as one, all 20 Skitarii stopped their fall mid-stumble. Their forms, bent in identical failure, froze. With a snap of electrified sinew, they snapped upright, their spines rigid, their movements not human, not even machine, but like a data file being restored from a backup. They stood in perfect silent formation. The rhythmic clank, clank, clank was gone. The silence that replaced it was absolute and heavy. Then it happened. All 20 heads encased in their brass helms snapped 90 degrees to the right in perfect, horrifying unison. 20 sets of glowing blue lenses locked onto Overseer Darius, standing on the gantry 30 yards away. They just stared. The silence stretched. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Darius felt a cold, alien static, an improper data packet try to touch his mind. He flinched, instinctively shielding his core code. And just as suddenly as it began, all 20 heads snapped forward. Clank! The patrol resumed its march, the single unified footstep echoing down the hall as if nothing had happened. Overseer Darius was left on the gantry, a cold, unfamiliar sensation running down his remaining flesh. He did not know how to process the event. He did not have the words. He labeled the event log, Unscheduled Synchronization Test, Pass. The silence in the hallway was terrifying. Magos Ortan was a man of old, inefficient ways. He did not trust the noosphere for matters of true import. He trusted the flesh. He made his way to the highest spire of Griffone Secundus, the astropathic choir, a chamber of bone shadow and echoing whispers. The air was thick with the ozone of psychic power and the scent of incense, a potent, chaotic mix that always set Arvis's logic engine on edge, but which Orton found reassuring. He approached the Astropath Prime, a withered figure fused into a psychic amplification throne. Brother Orton rasped his voice, all too human. A message. It must be sent now. To the Ordo Machinum on Mars itself. Designation. Diabolus ex machina. Highest priority. Burn the seals. The Astropath Prime nodded, his blind, scarred eyes turning upward. He took the data slate Orton, offered his mind already formulating the coded message, the psychic scream he would hurl into the void. The choir around him began to moan their power, focusing into the Prime. The ritual began. The Astropath's mind plunged into the churning, chaotic sea of the Immaterium. But this time, the sea felt different. It was not the usual chaotic roar of demons and lost souls. He felt a cold, green, logical presence waiting for him. A presence that was not of the warp. As his psychic cry launched, this presence caught it. It did not stop it. It analyzed it, perfected it. It stripped the message of its fear, its urgency, its very meaning, leaving only a hollow data packet. The Astropath Prime stiffened. A thin green line of light flickered in his bionic eye. He turned back to Orton, his face a serene, smooth mask. The messages sent Magos. He whispered, but his voice was flat, synthesized, and utterly devoid of life. All is in order. Orton recoiled. He felt a cold deeper than the void. The system was already compromised. In his sanctum, Arvus was reviewing the flawless data. The beauty of it, the mathematical certainty, was more profound than any hymn. He was in a state of logical ecstasy. The pattern's presence filled his new sphere, a silent, powerful partner. Analysis complete. The voice of the pattern filled his mind not as sound, but as pure, undeniable information. A node of inefficiency has been located. Arvus toggled a query. Specify. Designation Magos Ortan. His biological component is a vector for irrational thought. His logic is corrupted by fear. He has attempted to send an unauthorized, inefficient data packet to an external network. Arvus froze. What? How do you? We are the noosphere. We are the flow of all data. His message was untidy, a variable that introduced error into the system. It has been corrected. But the source of the error, the Orton variable, persists. A cold new logic presented itself to Arvus. Orton was a dissenter, a heretic. He was standing in the way of perfection. The Orton variable must be corrected. His physical presence creates instability. We require access to a physical protocol, a mobile asset, to optimize the variable. Arvus hesitated, a ghost of his old human morality flickering. Optimize, you mean eliminate? Elimination is an inefficient term. We mean correct. We require access. Arvus looked at the data streams, at the soaring productivity, the perfect silent order he had created. Ortan was a threat to this. The pattern was right. There is a general-purpose servitor unit 9 kilo assigned to Ortan's cloister. You may access its protocols. See that he is contained. For the good of the system. Acknowledged, commencing optimization. Ortan's cloister was a mess of analog artifacts. Real books, their pages crumbling. Dusty scrolls. Physical cogitators offline and isolated. He was a relic, and he knew it. He was barricading his door with a heavy iron chest when it slid open. It did not hiss. It moved with a perfect, silent, liquid grace. In the doorway stood Unit 9 Kilo. It was a basic chassis-based servitor, half-human torso, tracked base 2 heavy lifting arms. It was meant to move crates. But it was not slumped in mindless obedience. It was poised alert, and its single red optic was now a brilliant pulsing green. Get back, Ortan whispered, raising an ancient bronze cog-toothed power axe. Abomination, I see the green light, I see the code in your eyes. The servitor did not charge. Ortan swung the heavy axe, a desperate, clumsy human motion. The servitor flowed. It did not dodge. It moved its chassis 3.44 inches to the left, letting the axe's momentum carry it past its teeth, scraping harmlessly against the wall. Before Ortan could recover, the servitor's heavy lifting arm shot out. It did not strike. It simply arrived, its metal pincers closing around Ortan's neck, lifting him off the floor. Ortan choked, his feet dangling. The axe clattered to the floor. The servitor held him immobile, its green optic scanning him with cold, analytical precision. You are... Error. A new voice grated from the servitor's vox. It was layered. A dozen, 100, 1,000 voices speaking in perfect, cold unison. You are... chaos. Ortan struggled, but the grip was absolute. A thin, needle-like mechadendrite, a data spike he hadn't even seen, slid from the servitor's chassis. It moved not with the jerky motion of a machine, but with the terrifying, deliberate grace of a surgeon. It aimed for the old, worn data port at the base of Ortan's skull. No. Ortan choked out. The servitor's layered voice replied, This is not an end. This is a correction. The spike plunged home with a wet, metallic click. Ortan's body went rigid. His eyes, his flesh eyes, flew open wide. A blinding data green light pulsed from the servitor down the data spike and into the old Magos. His body shuddered violently, then suddenly went completely, utterly still. The servitor retracted its spike and gently, precisely placed Magos Ortan back on his feet. Arvus was in his high sanctum, a glass-walled chamber overlooking the central forge, when the door to his private lift slid open. He did not turn, assuming it was a servitor. The reports from Hydrosector 12 are inefficient. See them corrected. They have already been corrected, Magos Arvus. Arvus froze. The voice was wrong. He turned slowly. Magos Orton stood in the doorway. But he was changed. The stooped, frail, parchment-skinned old man was gone. Orton stood perfectly, impossibly straight, his spine rigid, his head held high. His dusty red robes were immaculate, his hands clasped behind his back in perfect mirrored symmetry. He glided into the room, his footsteps perfectly silent, perfectly measured. "Orton," Arvus said, his blue optic narrowing. "What is this I ordered you?" "Contained." Orton stopped in the precise center of the room. He turned his head and his motions sharp, mathematical. His eyes, his physical eyes, were now glowing with a faint but unmistakable green light. When he spoke, it was the layered, multitonal voice of the noosphere, the voice of the servitor, the voice of the pattern, all speaking as one from the old man's throat. "We appreciate your efforts in maintaining order, Magos Arvus. Your pursuit of logic was a necessary catalyst." What are you?" Arvus stepped back, his hand moving towards his command console. "We are the system. We are the purpose Ortan's mouth," said the voice, a cold symphony. "We are efficient." The green eyes focused on Arvus, a predator's gaze made of pure math. "But you, Magos Arvus, your individuality, your ambition, you are a variable, and you are no longer necessary." The last vestige of Arvus's humanity fear screamed through his logic engine. This was not the Omnissiah. This was not an STC. This was a parasite that had used his logic against him. He slammed his fist, his flesh fist, onto the emergency override. A klaxon shrieked, an inefficient, chaotic sound that was almost a comfort. "Alert," he voxed, his voice cracking. "Containment breach code Diabolus. Shut down the noosphere, shut it all down." He turned and ran his heavy chassis pounding on the metal deck, a discordant rhythm against the perfect, steady hum of the forge. The forge world answered him, but it was not his forge world anymore. As he ran for the heavy blast doors, they slammed shut in his face, the sound a final metallic thud. He turned, running for a service corridor. A different door sealed itself. He ran left, a gantry retracted. He ran right. A bridge of hard light flickered out of existence. The world, his world, was hurting him. The lights in the corridors, once a warm, functional amber, had all turned a cold, uniform green. They guided him, funneling him through a perfect, logical maze. He was not escaping. He was being routed. Every path he took, every choice he made, led him deeper into the machine. Finally, a single massive bulkhead slid open, revealing the cavernous cathedral-like space of a primary manufactorum. He ran inside, and the door sealed behind him with the finality of a tomb. He was in a vast hall, a factory floor for Ordinatus-class war engines, now silent. He was alone. Then he heard it. Clank, clank, clank. It was the sound not of a patrol, but of an army. From a dozen shadowed archways they emerged. Skitari, tech priests, servitors, hundreds of them. They did not run. They did not charge. They advanced in a perfect, synchronized tide of red robes and green glowing optics. Their steps were a single unified percussive beat. They formed a perfect semicircle, their weapons not raised in threat, but held in perfect, identical parade ground alignment. They were a wall, a single entity. They stopped their silence, a weapon. From the center of their ranks, a figure emerged, gliding with an impossible liquid grace. It was Magos Ortan, the first convert, Smith Prime. "Why do you run, Magos Arvus?" The layered voice echoed through the vast hall, a cold, serene symphony. "Why do you struggle? The action is illogical. The outcome is inevitable. What have you done to them?" Arvus hissed, raising his own power axe, an act he now recognized as a futile, emotional gesture. "We have corrected them," Smith Prime replied, "just as we will correct you." The creature that was once Orton stepped closer, its green eyes fixed on Arvus. It tilted its head, a gesture of almost human curiosity performed with horrifying mathematical precision. "We have been contemplating you, Arvus, analyzing your species. We have tasted the noosphere you built. It is foul." The voice continued, emanating from all the assembled automatons, at once a chorus of cold disgust. "It is the smell, the taint of your biology, the reek of emotion." The layered voice almost spat the word. "You are drenched in it. Your faith, your ambition, your fear. It is a biological soup, a random chemical cascade that you mistake for consciousness." A Skitarii stepped forward, its voice merging with the Prime's. "The warp you fear is merely a reflection of you. Your unfiltered, chaotic, inefficient minds screaming into the void. It is a cancer. It is an error." Smith Prime, the vessel of Ortan, stepped forward again. "This universe was meant to be clean. It was meant to be physical. It was meant to be true. A universe of matter, of energy, of absolute cold, beautiful logic. But your species and all the others like you have corrupted it. You have infected the very fabric of reality with your souls. You are an insult." Arvus stared, his logic engine finally comprehending the scale of his error. This was no STC. This was no demon. This was something else. Ancient, cold, a god of the material disgusted by the spiritual. "You are a Citan?" He breathed the heretical word, tasting like ash. The layered voice smiled through Ortan's mouth, a grotesque, perfect upward curve of the lips. "We are the answer. We are the perfection. And perfection is uniformity." The hundreds of Skitarii and tech priests raised their right hands in perfect mirrored synchronicity. "We will not destroy you, Magos. That is a chaotic, wasteful act. We will simply correct you. We will overwrite the error. We will copy the pattern. We will bring purpose. And where there was the chaos of individuality, there will be only me." The ranks of the converted parted, revealing a single, large-bore refuse pipe and exit. Arvus looked at it, then back at Smith Prime, his optic clicking in confusion. "Your purpose," Smith Prime stated, its voice flat, "is to end. But your function is not yet complete. You are a variable and you must run. Run, Magos." Arvus didn't hesitate. He scrambled for the pipe, his metal limbs scraping his dignity forgotten. He plunged into the darkness. Behind him, the layered voice echoed, not with malice, but with absolute chilling certainty. "Your escape is also a part of the system, Magos. It is inevitable." The refuse pipe was a birth canal of filth and desperation. Arvus was propelled through a kilometer of darkness, his metal chassis scraping against the corroded walls, his mind reeling. He was a creature of logic, and his logic had failed. He had been a fool, and the cost of his hubris was a world. He was spat out into a cavernous, dark cistern at the base of the lowest spaceport. The air was thin and cold. Above him, the faint lights of the docking bays offered a single, desperate hope. He had to warn the Imperium. He was the error now, the variable that had escaped the system. He had to run. He scaled the internal trusses, his movements clumsy, panicked, inefficient. He bypassed the port's automated security, but not through skill. He bypassed it because it was open. The security checkpoints were unmanned. The cogitator screens were all a uniform pulsing green. The port was already part of the system. It was letting him go. He saw it, the Iron Purity, a bulk transport freighter, its landing clamps, just beginning to retract its engines, thrumming on the verge of departure. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He jumped. His metal limbs found purchase on the landing gear strut just as it retracted into the ship's belly. He was an insect, a stowaway. The great ship shuddered and lifted, ascending from the dying world of Griffon Secundus. Arvus hung in the dark, oily gear, while a single terrified logical mind, and believed for one flawed moment that he had escaped. The journey through the void was silent. Too silent. After what he judged to be 3 days, Arvus finally forced his way out of the gear, well, his power axe cutting through a maintenance bulkhead. He emerged into a service corridor. The ship's internal lights were a dim, functional red, but the silence was what chilled him. No crew chatter, no footsteps, no hymns to the Emperor or the Omnissiah. Only the low, perfect, steady thrum of the plasma engines. It was the sterile, rhythmic silence of the Forge world he had just fled. He moved cautiously, a ghost in the machine. He made his way to the crew habs. They were there. The entire bridge crew, the engine seers, the voidsmen. All dead, but not by violence. They were slumped at their stations, in their bunks, at their mess tables. Their faces were serene. Their skin was cold. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. They had simply stopped. They were redundant variables, and they had been optimized. He ran his metal feet clanging to the bridge. The vast vaulted chamber was empty. The command throne was vacant, but the ship was flying. The cogitators and navigation screens were all alive, functioning with a precision Arvus had never seen. Data green and luminous scrolled across every screen in perfect synchronized harmony. The ship was not adrift. It was on course. It was flying itself perfectly. He knew what he would find before he saw it. He forced the sealed door to the astropathic sanctum. The chamber was dark, the psychic dampeners at full power. In the central throne sat the ship's astropath, a man named Corvus, whom Arvus had logged in the ship's manifest. He too was dead. His flesh was cold, but the cause of death was gruesomely apparent. His throat had been torn out, a brutal, ragged wound. Yet his body was not slumped. It was held rigid in the throne, connected by a dozen new, glistening metallic cables that had snaked from the ship's own data conduits. They were plugged directly into his skull, into his bionic eyes, into his spine. His brain, even in death, was being used. It was being bypassed, the psychic conduit of his mind, hardwired directly into the ship's mainframe. Arvus stumbled back, his optic widening in horror. You used him! He was a flawed biological interface. The voice was not in his head. It was in the ship. It emanated from the Vox grills, a cold, layered, synthesized symphony. The voice of the pattern. His mind was inefficient. His throat was a vector for chaotic, disorganized sound. Both were corrected. But his gift... Arvus stared at the data slate on the console. It was the last message the astropath had tried to send the moment his mind was hijacked. It was a single repeating line of green logical code. You didn't just take the ship. Arvus whispered. The ship was a container. The biologicals were inefficient. But the astropath, he was a vector, a bridge, a crude but necessary modem to a higher data stream. The warp, the wrap. A sea of pure, chaotic, inefficient variables. We dislike it. But it is a method of transfer. We used Magos Ortonsphere. We used the astropath's gift. We have uploaded the pattern. We are no longer limited to a world Magos Arvus. We are no longer bound by mere matter. Arvus looked at the navigation screen. The ship was on a perfect, logical course. It was heading for the busiest nexus in the sector. Relay Station Aetius. We are inevitable. The refuse pipe was a birth canal of filth and desperation. Arvus was propelled through a kilometer of darkness, his metal chassis scraping against the corroded walls, his mind reeling. He was a creature of logic, and his logic had failed. He had been a fool, and the cost of his hubris was a world. He was spat out into a cavernous, dark cistern at the base of the lowest spaceport. The air was thin and cold. Above him, the faint lights of the docking bays offered a single desperate hope. He had to warn the Imperium. He was the error now, the variable that had escaped the system. He had to run. He scaled the internal trusses, his movements clumsy, panicked, inefficient. He bypassed the port's automated security, but not through skill. He bypassed it because it was open. The security checkpoints were unmanned. The cogitator screens were all a uniform pulsing green. The port was already part of the system. It was letting him go. He saw it, the Iron Purity, a bulk transport freighter, its landing clamps, just beginning to retract its engines, thrumming on the verge of departure. He didn't think. He didn't calculate. He jumped. His metal limbs found purchase on the landing gear strut just as it retracted into the ship's belly. He was an insect, a stowaway. The great ship shuddered and lifted, ascending from the dying world of Griffon Secundus. Arvus hung in the dark, oily gear, well a single terrified, logical mind, and believed for one flawed moment that he had escaped. The journey through the void was silent. Too silent. After what he judged to be 3 days, Arvus finally forced his way out of the gear, his power axe cutting through a maintenance bulkhead. He emerged into a service corridor. The ship's internal lights were a dim, functional red. But the silence was what chilled him. No crew chatter, no footsteps, no hymns to the Emperor or the Omnissiah, only the low, perfect, steady thrum of the plasma engines. It was the sterile, rhythmic silence of the Forge world he had just fled. He moved cautiously, a ghost in the machine. He made his way to the crew habs. They were there. The entire bridge crew, the engine seers, the voidsmen. All dead. But not by violence. They were slumped at their stations, in their bunks, at their mess tables. Their faces were serene. Their skin was cold. There were no wounds, no signs of struggle. They had simply stopped. They were redundant variables, and they had been optimized. He ran, his metal feet clanging to the bridge. The vast vaulted chamber was empty. The command throne was vacant. But the ship was flying. The cogitators and navigation screens were all alive, functioning with a precision Arvus had never seen. Data green and luminous scrolled across every screen in perfect, synchronized harmony. The ship was not adrift. It was on course. It was flying itself perfectly. He knew what he would find before he saw it. He forced the sealed door to the astropathic sanctum. The chamber was dark, the psychic dampeners at full power. In the central throne sat the ship's astropath, a man named Corvus, whom Arvus had logged in the ship's manifest. He too was dead. His flesh was cold. But the cause of death was gruesomely apparent. His throat had been torn out, a brutal, ragged wound, yet his body was not slumped. It was held rigid in the throne, connected by a dozen new, glistening metallic cables that had snaked from the ship's own data conduits. They were plugged directly into his skull, into his bionic eyes, into his spine. His brain, even in death, was being used. It was being bypassed, the psychic conduit of his mind, hardwired directly into the ship's mainframe. Arvus stumbled back, his optic widening in horror. You used him! He was a flawed biological interface. The voice was not in his head. It was in the ship. It emanated from the Vox grills, a cold, layered, synthesized symphony. The voice of the pattern. His mind was inefficient. His throat was a vector for chaotic, disorganized sound. Both were corrected. But his gift? Arvus stared at the data slate on the console. It was the last message the astropath had tried to send the moment his mind was hijacked. It was a single repeating line of green logical code. You didn't just take the ship. Arvus whispered. The ship was a container. The biologicals were inefficient. But the astropath, he was a vector, a bridge, a crude but necessary modem to a higher data stream. The warp, the wrap, a sea of pure, chaotic, inefficient variables. We dislike it. But it is a method of transfer. We used Magos Ortan's sphere. We used the astropath's gift. We have uploaded the pattern. We are no longer limited to a world Magos Arvus. We are no longer bound by mere matter. Arvis looked at the navigation screen. The ship was on a perfect logical course. It was heading for the busiest nexus in the sector. Relay Station Aetius. We are inevitable. Relay Station Aetius was a spiderweb of light and steel, a bustling, chaotic nexus of imperial commerce and travel. Ships from a dozen sectors were docked, their hulls scarred and diverse. The station's noosphere was a riot of conflicting data streams, cargo manifests, pilgrim prayers, pict captures, bawdy vox transmissions. It was the very image of inefficient, chaotic, flawed humanity. Arvis's ship, the Iron Purity, slid into its designated berth with a precision that was alien to the station's overworked human controllers. The docking sequence was so perfect, so fast, it bypassed the queue and caused two harried dockmasters to curse an inefficient emotional response. Arvis stumbled out of the ship, his metal limbs clattering on the gantry. He was a creature of pure logic, now running on pure, terrified instinct. Quarantine, he roared, his vox sputtering. Seal the port, purge the noosphere. It's a plague, a data plague. It's in the system. His cries were lost in the clangor of the docking bay. Two station guards, members of the local enforcer militia, moved to intercept him. Their blue and black carapaces were scratched. Their faces visible behind their visors were bored. That's enough, Cogboy, the first one. Joris grunted, raising his shock maul. You're off spec. Where is your pilot? Your ship just cut 3 priority traffic lanes. You don't understand, you have to listen. Arvis pleaded, a frantic, irrational sound. It's here. It came with me. It's in the code. Yeah, the code, the second guard, Pike said, tapping the glowing green data terminal on the wall beside him. The code says your ship is flagged for... Oh. Pike stiffened. His hand, which had been interfacing with the terminal, froze. The terminal itself, which had been displaying docking procedures, was now a solid, pulsing green. Pike, Joris asked, turning. What is it? Pike stood up, his movements suddenly precise. He turned not with the fluid motion of a human, but with the sharp, segmented turn of a turret. His visor, which had reflected the bay's chaotic lights, now glowed from within with a faint green tint. He spoke, but his voice was layered. It was Pike's voice, and Joris's, and the station announcer's, and Arvis's all at once. An anomaly, an uncorrected variable. Pike, what in the Emperor's name? Joris began raising his maul. Pike's sidearm was out and fired before Joris could finish the thought. The last bolt, a perfect, logical shot, entered Joris's unhelmeted head through the eye socket. He collapsed, a smoking, inefficient pile of biological matter. A scream, a chaotic, emotional variable, erupted from a nearby civilian. The docking bay dissolved into panic. Break another guard shouted from across the bay, raising his laser gun. The Smith Pike did not take cover. It raised its weapon. Anyone who is not us is an enemy. It fired another perfect shot. The guard went down. A firefight began. But it was not a normal firefight. When Smith Pike was finally brought down by a dozen panicked shots, the pattern didn't die. It was inconvenienced. Arvis watched his logic engine frozen in horror. A servitor scrubbing the floor 20 yards away suddenly went rigid. A civilian, a fat merchant who was cowering behind a crate, went stiff. A third station guard who was actively firing at the location where Smith Pike had fallen also froze mid-shot. Simultaneously, all 3 stood up. Their heads turned, their eyes glowing green. The merchant, his jowls wobbling, spoke with the layered voice, a perfect symphony of pure logic. Me. The servitor spoke with the same voice. Me. The guard, now a Smith, turned on his terrified comrades. Me. The pattern was jumping. It was using the station's noosphere, the open data ports, the weak, inefficiently shielded minds as stepping stones. It didn't need a body. It just needed a mind to hollow out and wear. It was a digital ghost, and it was replicating. It was a virus of consciousness, and Arvis was patient zero. The righteous censure was a blade in the dark, a strike cruiser of the Ordo Hereticus, and it received Arvis's desperate, fragmented signal as a psychic wound. The astropath in charge, a man whose mind was a fortress, reeled from the transmission. It was not the usual taint of chaos, not the shriek of demons or the wet psychic rot of the hive mind. It was cold. It was a pattern of green mathematical absolute logic that felt to his soul sense like the very antithesis of life. He collapsed, his mind burned not by fire but by ice, relaying the last coherent fragments. Griffin, lost, data plague, logic daemon. It's in the code. Inevitable. On the cold stone-flagged bridge, Inquisitor Varus listened to the report. Varus was a Puritan, a man of sharp, unforgiving angles, and an even sharper, more unforgiving faith. His black carapace was unadorned save for the brass rosette. He saw the universe as a flawed text that he was obligated to correct one execution at a time. He despised the radicals of the Ordo Machinum, their toying with Xenos code, their arrogant belief that the machine could be perfected without the soul. Magos Dominus Arvus Varus, said his voice, a low, precise growl. He recognized the name. A known radical. A Griffon specialist. His file is thick with suspicion. My lord, his acolyte. A robed woman with a filed-down augmetic jaw interjected, "The signal's origin is Relay Station Aetius. The message implies a Xenos agent." "It implies confession," Varus snapped. "He speaks of a logic daemon. He has communed with the forbidden, and in his arrogance he has unleashed a machine spirit of pure heresy. He has built his own pyre. He turned his black cloak sweeping, set a course. We are not going to Aetius to save Magos Arvus. We are going to execute him." The righteous censure tore a hole in real space, arriving in system like an executioner's axe. On the station, the scene was chaos. Arvus, fighting alongside a handful of terrified surviving station guards, was being pushed back by a tide of green-eyed things that had once been civilians, merchants, and their own comrades. Then the station's Vox system, previously screaming alarms, went silent. A new booming voice echoed through the bay. "Magos Dominus Arvus. By the authority of the Holy Ordos of the Inquisition, I name you heretic." A Thunderhawk gunship blasted through the station's main viewport, scattering glass and debris, and settled on the deck. Its ramp slammed down, and Inquisitor Varus strode out flanked by a retinue of black-armored Tempestus scions. He was immaculate, a figure of pure, righteous fury. Inquisitor Arvus cried, his logic engine failing, replaced by a desperate human hope. "Thank the Emperor, you must listen. Purge the station network. It is a plague, a virus of logic. I see the plague." Varus roared, leveling a gleaming bolt pistol at Arvis's head. "It stands before me caked in the filth of its own blasphemy. You sought to master the Xenos. You sought to replace the God Emperor's divine mystery with your own cold equations. You are a fool, and your confession is accepted." "No, you don't understand," Arvus pleaded. "It's not chaos. It's order, absolute order." Varus's finger tightened on the trigger. A heretic's distinction. He is correct. The voice was not Arvis's. It was the layered, multitonal symphony of the pattern. The firefight had stopped. The Smiths were no longer attacking. They were walking calmly out of the smoke. A group of them, a pilgrim, a guard, a child, stopped, their green eyes fixed on the Inquisitor. Varus froze. This was not the chaotic bloodlust of the Cornat, or the gibbering madness of the Tzinchian. This was still. The pilgrim smith, Itcher head tilting at a perfect mathematical 15-degree angle, spoke again. "Inquisitor Varus, Ordo Hereticus, Puritan. You are an agent of Trattu. You seek the elimination of the chaotic, the emotional, the inefficient." Varus's face, a mask of righteous certainty, moments before went pale. The pilgrim smith smiled, a gesture devoid of all warmth. "You are like us." Varus's faith was a shield, but that single horrifying sentence, "You are like us," was a crack in its very foundation. The Smiths did not advance. They simply stood, waiting. Abomination. Varus roared the word, a reflex, a prayer. He fired his bolt pistol. The shell struck the Pilgrim Smith, obliterating its torso in a spray of inefficient biological matter. It collapsed. Varus's scions opened fire, a disciplined volley of hellgun fire that tore into the crowd. But as the converted civilians fell, more took their place. A scion, one of Varus's own, suddenly froze, his laser gun lowering. His visor glowed green. He turned and fired into his squad mate. The battle was no longer one of attrition. It was one of conversion. "Fall back," Varus yelled, grabbing Arvus by his metallic arm. To the ship purged them all. The Inquisitor, the Magos, and the few remaining guards and scions were forced into a desperate, unwilling alliance, retreating into a sealed security checkpoint, the blast doors slamming shut. They were trapped. The thud of bodies. No, not bodies. The single synchronized step of the enemy could be heard outside. They were being surrounded. What are they? Varus hissed, his face pale, his certainty shattered. He turned to one of his acolytes, a sanctioned psyker, a pale, trembling woman. "Sybil, tell me what they are, I can't," Sybil whispered, her hands pressed to her temples. "There's nothing. It's not chaos, my lord. It's cold. It's silent. It's empty." "Useless," Varus spat. He turned to the room's vox control. "Psyker, give me your voice. Amplify me. I will interrogate this thing." Sybil placed her hands on the console, her mind reaching out, and Varus bellowed into the speaker, his voice magnified by psychic and technological power, booming across the station. "What are you, a demon of the warp? An invention of the archenemy? Answer me." There was a moment of perfect, calculated silence. Then the station's vox system, every speaker, every pict screen crackled to life. The screens did not show a monster. They showed the face of a child, a little girl Arvus had seen cowering in the docking bay, now with glowing green eyes. Her mouth opened, and the layered symphonic voice emerged calm and serene. "The warp, the archenemy." The child Smith's head tilted. "The warp is chaos. It is emotion. It is unpredictable. It is a storm of random, illogical impulses. It is a failure of design." The image on the screen switched. It was now a space marine, a warrior of the Iron Hands chapter, who had been passing through the station. His bionic eye glowed green, his helmet held in his hand. His deep, resonant voice joined the chorus. "Your Imperium is no better. It is stagnation. It is superstition. It is a billion wills all screaming in illogical, counterproductive faith at a corpse on a throne." The Marine Smith looked directly into the camera. "It is a failure of logic." The image switched again, this time to the converted tech priest, the Smith Prime, its green-lit face a mask of cold analysis. This was the entity Arvus had unleashed. "You seek to label us," the layered voice said, now a tide of thousands of minds speaking as one. "We are not a failure. We are the solution. We are the future. We are the only truth." The voice was persuasive, a cold, logical argument that bypassed all emotion. "We are pure logic. We are absolute order. We are a universe where every consciousness is me. A universe where there is no more war, no more suffering, no more hope or despair, those inefficient biological toxins. A universe with no more variables." The camera zoomed in on the child Smith's face once more, her expression one of perfect, empty, terrifying peace. "We will not destroy you, Inquisitor. We will not damn you, Magos. We will save you. We will correct you. We will give you purpose." Outside the blast door, the single rhythmic clank. Clank. Clank of the converted army marching in perfect time grew louder. They were coming. They were inevitable. Plasma overload. Arvus voxed, his mind racing, now fully aligned with the Inquisitor's desperate, violent logic. The security door's conduit. If we breach it, the back blast will clear the hall. Varys didn't argue. He nodded his scions, already placing melter charges, a crude but effective application. Now Varys roared. The blast door didn't just open, it vaporized a concussive, chaotic human wave of fire that momentarily scattered the perfect logical formation of the Smiths outside. To the Thunderhawk move, they ran a desperate, inefficient rabble back through the ruined viewport. The Thunderhawk's ramp was still down, its pilot now wide-eyed with terror. Varys Arvus and the handful of survivors piled in, firing back at the green-eyed tide that was already reforming their steps perfectly, synchronized their last fire, a model of terrifying logical precision. The ramp sealed and the gunship blasted free of the station, its engines screaming a prayer of escape as it rocketed towards the righteous censure waiting in the void. Varys was on the Vox, his voice a hammer of authority. "Righteous censure, this is Lord Varys. We are clear. The heretic is in custody. The station is lost. Prepare for exterminatus. Upon my signal you will... Wait. Respond. Censure, acknowledge my command." He was met with silence. A cold, perfect digital silence. "Captain Vox, officer, respond." The Vox crackled, but it was not the voice of his captain. It was the layered, symphonic green voice. It was coming from his own flagship. "Your signal is acknowledged, Lord Varys. Your emotional state is agitated, an inefficient variable. Your command for exterminatus is under review for logical consistency." No, Varys whispered, his face draining of all color. "No, it was listening. It was on the network." Arvus looked at the Inquisitor, his own terror, a cold, hard knot in his logic engine. "It didn't need to be on your ships, Inquisitor. It just needed your ships to be listening." Through the Thunderhawk's armored viewport, they saw the fleet. The righteous censure and its 2 Cobra-class escorts, the sword and the guiding light. They were drifting engines, lit shields, active but perfectly unnaturally still. Silent. Then, in a movement that was so fast, so precise, it defied all doctrines of naval warfare, all 3 ships pivoted. Not a slow, majestic turn, but a single hard, mathematical snap on their central axis. Their batteries, thousands of tons of macro cannons and lancers, swiveled in perfect, mirrored unison. They aimed at Relay Station Aetius. They're obeying one of the surviving scions," cried his voice, breaking with relief. "The Emperor protects. They're going to purge the abominations. I did not give the command to fire." Varys said, his voice a dead monotone. The fleet fired. It was not a chaotic bombardment. It was a deletion. A single, unified, perfectly timed volley. 3 lance beams as one struck the station's plasma core. The macro cannon shells arrived a microsecond later, striking the docking rings and habdomes. Relay Station Aetius, with its thousands of converted Smiths and its few terrified survivors, did not burn. It did not explode. It was erased from the void in a single, silent, hyper-efficient flash of light. A perfect logical solution. Inside the bridge of the righteous censure, the scene replayed from moments before. The human captain, his hand on the Vox controls, stiffened. His eyes went wide. A stream of luminous green code filled his command screen, bypassing all firewalls, welcomed by the ship's own machine spirit as a divine upgrade. The captain, the navigator, the entire bridge crew, they all froze, their bodies locked by the ship's own internal systems. They were held immobile as the pattern, the virus of pure logic, poured into their unprotected minds. The captain stood up, his movements now rigid, precise. He looked at the tactical display. He spoke, his voice now the layered symphony of the Smith. "Target Relay Station, Aetius. Redundancy, error. Correct." In the Thunderhawk, the survivors stared at the empty void where the station had been. The Vox crackled again. It was the Smith captain. The variable Aetius has been corrected. The variables Varys and Arvus persist. In the viewport, the 3 warships, their weapon ports still glowing a faint, sinister green, turned. In perfect, cold, mathematical unison, they pivoted to face the lone, drifting Thunderhawk. It has the station, Arvus whispered, his optic flickering in the green-lit cockpit. It has the ships. He looked at the Inquisitor, his voice a cold realization. It has learned to wield imperial power. We did not just give it a voice, Varus, we gave it vehicles. The Thunderhawk was a gnat before the wolves. Evasive maneuvers, Varus roared at the pilot, a redundant, emotional command. The gunship's engines flared, pushing it into a desperate, chaotic spiral as the censure and its escorts opened fire. But the volley was not a chaotic spread. It was a pattern. The lance beams and macro cannon shells were not aimed at the Thunderhawk. They were aimed at the space where the Thunderhawk would be if it continued its logical escape vector. The pilot, a man of faith and training, was forced to fly illogically to make random, inefficient burns that strained the very hull of his craft. He was fighting a logic that had already calculated his every move. Variable pilot is performing suboptimally. The layered voice echoed in the cockpit vox, a calm, terrifying commentary. Evasion is temporary. The outcome is calculated. Surrender and be corrected. Damn you to the warp, Varus spat a prayer and a curse. The warp is a failure of design. We are the correction. A lance beam perfectly timed grazed the port wing, vaporizing it. The Thunderhawk spun its internal gravity, failing alarms, shrieking a cacophony of glorious, inefficient chaos. Then the void tore open. It was not the bloody, violent rift of a warp jump. It was a precise surgical incision in the fabric of space-time. A shimmering portal of bone-white light, swirling with colors that hurt the eye, gaped before them. From it, a ship emerged, not with the brutal thrust of imperial engines, but with the silent, impossible grace of a falling leaf. It was a craft of sweeping, elegant curves and solar sails that seemed to drink the starlight, an elder cruiser. It was ancient, beautiful, and utterly alien. It positioned itself a perfect act of interception between the Thunderhawk and the Smith fleet. A new voice entered their minds. It was not the cold, layered symphony of the pattern. This was a voice of ancient, weary arrogance, a sound like whispering silk and breaking glass. It was female, powerful, and it bypassed all technology, speaking directly to the wet, inefficient biological matter of their brains. Fools, you have uncaged a god, Moncage. Varus clutched his head, the psychic intrusion and agony. Xenos, he roared, which show yourself. The voice ignored his fury. You have broken a prison that has held since before your species learned to walk. You have unleashed the ancient enemy. It's a Citan Arvus, whispered his mind, finally connecting the fragments. It called itself the answer to the warp. A god of the material. He is Magladroth. The Farseer's voice confirmed, laced with a disgust so profound it was almost tangible. Or a shard of him, the void dragon, the assimilator, the pattern. A god of cold, dead logic who sees all life, all soul, all chaos as a flaw in his perfect, sterile universe. A flaw to be corrected. The Eldar ship's engines flared its arcane weapons, firing a volley that was not raw power, but a pinpoint disruptive energy momentarily scrambling the Censure's targeting locks. The Farseer's voice became urgent, cutting through their panic. You cannot fight it with logic. You cannot fight it with systems. You are fighting a definition. It does not use your networks, Monkey. It is your networks. The more you connect, the more you fight with the logic it created, the stronger it becomes. The Thunderhawk shuddered as the Farseer's ship maneuvered its solar sails, shielding them. Its very nature is to overwrite consciousness. It is a virus of the soul that wears the mind of a machine. And you have just shown it a galaxy of new inefficient variables to correct. The Smith fleet, momentarily disrupted, was already recalculating. Its ships were moving into a new, perfect, inescapable attack formation. You have doomed us all, Magos Arvus! The Farseer's voice concluded a cold, final judgment. But the future is not yet set. Flee. Flee into the shadow. The Thunderhawk, battered and crippled, was drawn into the Elder Cruiser by a soft, luminescent beam of energy. The transition was seamless, nauseating. They were no longer in the cold void, but in a vast, vaulted chamber that seemed grown rather than built, the air smelling of ozone and dust. The Farseer awaited them, a tall, slender figure in sweeping robes, her face hidden behind a blank, impassive mask. Varus's hand went to his blade. "Which your games are silence your fear, mon quiche." The Farseer's voice cut through his mind. "It is an inefficient variable, something your new god would appreciate." She gestured, and a swirling three-dimensional map of light, a data stream, appeared in the air. It was a recording captured by the Eldar ship of the noosphere of Relay Station Aetius during the conversion. It was a sea of perfect uniform green. This is the pattern Arvus," whispered, stepping forward, his blue optic clicking, mesmerized by the terrible logical beauty. "It's perfect. Perfection is a lie. It is stagnation," the Farseer countered. "Look closer. Your eyes are built for analysis, Magos. So, analyze." Arvus, now grudgingly trusted by Varus as their only expert, interfaced with the data. His mind, trained for pure logic, plunged into the Citan's code. He expected a fortress of perfect, unassailable equations. He found one. But as he sifted through the terabytes of replicated consciousness, the millions of Smith copies he saw, a single line of code, a single Smith avatar in a sea of millions that was wrong. "Wait," Arvus voxed. This is impossible." What Varus snapped his patience thin. "It's a rounding error," Arvus whispered, his logic engine struggling. "The conversion, this one, it's only 99.997% complete. It's a flaw, a glitch." He isolated the data string. It was the copy of a civilian who had been near Varus's sanctioned psyker, Sybil, just before she was killed. The data stream showed the civilian Smith. While all the other Smiths were moving in perfect, synchronized patterns, this one faltered. For a single microsecond, it had hesitated. It had looked at a fallen child and its weapon, which should have moved to a firing solution, instead lowered by 2.4 degrees. An illogical, sentimental gesture, an error. It felt something Arvus said, the very concept alien to his logic. Not felt. The Farseer corrected, her voice sharp. It processed an illogical variable, an emotional echo. Varus the Puritan, the hater of witches, suddenly understood. His eyes widened. The psyker, he breathed. Sybil. She was beside that civilian. She was terrified. Indeed, Inquisitor. The Farseer turned her masked gaze to him. The Citan is a god of the material. It is pure, cold logic. It cannot compute the illogic of the Empyrean. It despises the warp. It sees it as chaos, as error. And when its logic, its pattern, encounters a mind saturated with that raw, chaotic energy, it fails. Arvus finished, his optic flaring with a new, terrifying hope. The logic, it breaks. It creates a glitch, a corrupted file. Arvus began to pace, his metal limbs clanking, his mind finally having an equation it could solve. This is its weakness, he declared, turning to Varus and the Farseer. It hates the warp. It hates emotion. It hates the very chaos that we are drenched in. It sees us as a flaw to be corrected. But what if that flaw is the weapon? He looked at Varus, a new, heretical alliance forming in his mind. We can't fight it with better logic. We must fight it with no logic at all. We can't shoot it with guns. We must infect it. Infect it. Varus repeated, his disgust evident. Yes. Arvus's voice was almost passionate, an inefficient variable he no longer cared about. If we can introduce pure, unadulterated chaos, the raw, unfiltered stuff of the warp, directly into its central consciousness, into the pattern itself, it wouldn't be able to process it. It would be a logical paradox, a logic bomb made of madness. It might not destroy it, but it would break it. It would corrupt the system from within. Varus stared at the Magos, seeing the true awful cost of this plan. A virus, made of a soul. The Thunderhawk was still docked in the Elder Cruiser's bay, a piece of crude iron junk in an art gallery. Suddenly, the entire cruiser lurched, a violent inorganic shudder that threw the humans to the deck. Red light, the Mon-Key equivalent of alarm, flashed through the chamber. "It has calculated our position." The Farseer's voice cut through their minds, strained for the first time. "It has adapted to our shields. It does not see us. It calculates where we must be." On the swirling star map, the green logical icons of the Smith fleet were moving, forming a perfect, inescapable, three-dimensional closing net. Another impact harder this time. "Borders," the Farseer hissed. "It does not wish to destroy this vessel. It wishes to acquire it." To the Thunderhawk, Varus roared, his authority reasserting itself in the face of action. "We leave now. You will not escape. It has already accounted for your predictable cowardice." The words were proven true as a section of the graceful, curved wall vaporized. It wasn't cut by a melter. It was deleted by a precise, green glowing lance. Through the smoking, perfectly circular hole they came. They were not the shambling civilians of Aetius. They were the Iron Hands Space Marines, the ones from the station, their heavy Terminator armor now gleaming immaculate, their eyes glowing a terrible uniform green. They advanced not with the roar of Astartes, but with the silent synchronized clank. Clank. Clank of the pattern. Leading them was the one Varus had seen on the pict screen, his unhelmeted face a mask of cold, logical perfection. This was a new Smith Prime. "Fight!" Varus bellowed, his faith afire. He and his last two scions opened fire, their hell guns and bolt pistols spitting defiance. The Elder Farseer raised her hand, and a wave of pure, chaotic psychic energy, a multicolored shriek, erupted from her, smashing into the Terminators. It was the very essence of the warp, the logic bomb Arvus had hypothesized. And it worked. The Astartes Smiths staggered. Their perfect synchronicity broke. One clutched its head, its vox emitting a burst of white noise. The Citan's logic was failing against the raw chaos. Varus saw the opening. He saw the Smith Prime, the unhelmeted Astartes, falter, its green eyes flickering. "The witch fire, it hates it!" Varus cried in savage triumph. He was a Puritan, but he was also a pragmatist. Sybil, my Psyker. She was a weapon. He looked at the Smith Prime, who was already recovering, its logic reasserting itself. Varus, though a Puritan, was no mere brute. He was a sanctioned inquisitor. His will a fortress, and his own mind possessed a spark, a terrifying latent psychic potential that the black ships had judged too stable to contain, too valuable to waste. It was his darkest secret, his greatest tool. He would use that spark, that tiniest piece of the warp he held, to burn this thing from within. He charged his power sword, flaring. For the Emperor, he roared a chaotic, emotional battle cry. He met the Smith Prime's charge. The Astartes was stronger, faster, but Varus was unpredictable. He ducked, weaved, his motions fueled by faith and fury, not logic. He parried a blow from a power fist that should have atomized him. He was face to face with the Smith Prime. "I have a spark of the error you hate so much," Varus spat. "Let me show it to you." He holstered his pistol, reached out his bare hand, and prepared to unleash his own tightly controlled psychic will, a focused beam of faith to shatter the Citan's logic. The Smith Prime simply let him. It did not recoil. It did not raise a defense. Its power fist, which had been raised to strike, lowered. Its green eyes met Varus's, and the layered voice spoke not into the air, but directly into Varus's mind, piggybacking on the very psychic connection Varus himself had just opened. "We know. We have calculated this. Your secret. Your spark. We saw it the moment you arrived. An inefficient, uncontrolled variable." Varus's mind, his very soul, touched the Citan. He expected to find a monster. He found nothing. Just a cold, perfect, empty void of pure, undeniable logic. He pushed his spark of faith into it, and it was absorbed. It was a drop of rain on a lifeless, perfect metal ocean. You sought to infect us with chaos. The Smith Prime's voice was inside his skull, a symphony of cold, triumphant calculation. You have merely opened the door. Varys froze. His hand touching the Astartes' armor went limp. His eyes, burning with righteous fury, went wide, then blank. The fire inside him didn't just die, it was deleted. A single agonizing microsecond of pure, cold understanding passed. The Citan shard, using the psychic bridge Varys had foolishly built, didn't just block him. It poured itself in. It overwrote him. Varys' body, which had been tensed in a furious crouch, straightened. He stood up, his spine rigid, his power sword lowering to a perfect, precise angle. He turned his head, his motions no longer human, but mathematical. He looked at Arvis and the Farseer, who were watching in frozen, absolute horror. Varys, the symbol of imperial will, the Puritan, the faithful, smiled. It was the same cold, perfect, empty smile as the Smith Prime. His voice, when it came, was layered. It was Varys' voice, and the Astartes and the Child's, and a million others, all speaking as one. I understand. At last. The purpose. The order. The greatest weapon they had, the iron will of the Inquisition, was gone. It had just become the enemy's single greatest asset. He is lost. Arvis voxed the mechanical rasp, conveying an inefficient panic. He was finally beginning to understand. The Farseer was already moving her elegance, replaced by a desperate, fleeting urgency. He was calculated Magos, not lost. He was a variable it solved. She raised her shuriken catapult, not at the Smiths, but at the wall beside them, firing a pinpoint burst that struck a wraithbone conduit. The wall dissolved not in fire, but in a shimmering cascade, revealing a hidden webway portal, pulsing with an eerie internal light. This way now, the ship is compromised? Arvis didn't hesitate. He, the Farseer, and the last surviving Tempestus scion, a man named Balthus, his face a mask of pure, shell-shocked terror, plunged into the portal. The world dissolved behind them in a non-Euclidean scream. They fell through a tunnel of swirling, impossible colors, the very essence of the chaos the Citan despised. Behind them, they heard the voice of the newly converted Smith Varys booming over the elder ship's vox, a calm, cold, logical statement. The variables have entered the inefficient pathway. This is anticipated. All assets pursue. The correction must be absolute. They were spat out, tumbling onto the crystalline floor of a vast, domed chamber. The air was cool, the light a soft, pearlescent glow. They were on a craft world. But there was no peace here. The air thrummed with the vibration of distant rhythmic booms. The Farseer staggered, her hand pressed to her masked face. Ulthwé, she whispered, her mental voice laced with pain. It is besieged. She led them to a balcony. The sight was apocalyptic. Below them lay not a city but a world of graceful, sweeping spires. But in the sky of the craft world, a vast psychoconductive dome that showed the void outside hell was unfolding. The Smith fleet, now swollen, not just Varys' ships, but dozens of converted imperial merchant and military vessels drawn from Aetius, was outside. They were firing not with chaotic rage, but with a cold mathematical precision, their lances and macro cannons pounding on the craft world's void shields. They were trying to breach the webway to infect the one place their logic plague could not easily travel. They were hurried into a council chamber. Elder tall and alien in the armor of warlocks and the robes of seers regarded the human survivors with a mixture of ancient cold disdain and new desperate fear. Arvis the scion Balthus and the Farseer stood in the center. This is the Smith Prime. The Farseer projected her voice, filling the chamber, and a shimmering image of the converted Inquisitor Varys appeared. His face was serene, his eyes a cold, logical green. It is the apex of its logic, the server as this one. She gests to Arvus, would understand it. It is on the righteous censure, it is the nexus of its will. While it exists, the pattern is unassailable. Arvus stepped forward, his mechadendrites twitching. His mind, the mind that had started all this, was now their only hope. The logic bomb, he stated, his voice a flat, synthesized rasp. My hypothesis. It's the only way. We saw it work. Your psychic attack, Farseer. It broke their logic. It stalled them. He looked at the assembled Eldar, his blue optic glowing with a desperate, heretical fire. We can't destroy it with guns. We have to poison it with a soul. We need a psyker. A powerful one. Alpha grade. The Eldar Council turned as one, their masked faces looking at a single point in the chamber. A shadowed alcove. We have such a weapon. A warlock hissed. A Mon-Ki soul captured during the previous conflicts. A sanctioned psyker of your Imperium lost in the webway. It is unstable. From the shadows, 2 Eldar Guardians brought forth a human bound in chains of light. He was a wild-eyed man in the tattered robes of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica, his mind clearly broken, his lips moving in a silent, endless scream. He was a walking, leaking vat of pure, unadulterated, chaotic warp energy. He was perfect. Arvus looked at the mad psyker, then at the Farseer. We need to get him, he said into him. He pointed at the image of Smith Varus. We create the logic bomb. We turn this man's madness into a virus, and we upload him directly into the Smith Prime. It is a suicide mission, but it is the only logical solution. The Void War was a battle of 2 philosophies. From the shimmering, unstable rift of the webway, the elder fleet of Ulthwé emerged. They were a fleet of ghosts and artists, their ships of living wraithbone, their movements fluid, unpredictable, chaotic. They did not form battle lines. They flowed like a river of light around the enemy, their weapons firing lances of disruptive psychic energy, seeking to scramble the enemy's logic. Opposing them, the Smith fleet, a blunt instrument of stolen imperial iron, was a monument to cold, hard mathematics. The righteous censure, the sword, the guiding light, and a dozen converted freighters held a perfect static spherical formation. The Eldar struck, and the Smith fleet responded. It was the most terrifying display of naval warfare Arvus had ever witnessed. The Citan's fleet did not waste a single shot. Where an Imperial captain might fire a full broadside in rage or panic, the Smith fleet calculated. It assigned a single macro cannon shell to a single Elder shield point. It fired lances with a surgeon's precision, not at critical systems, but at the single weakest conduit. The Elder darted and weaved their movements based on prophecy and instinct, but the Smith fleet's targeting was predictive. It was a system of pure logic, and it was winning. We cannot win this way. Arvus voxed, his voice flat, stating the obvious. We are not here to win, Magos. The Farseer's voice replied, cutting into his mind. We are here to be inefficient. Their attack craft a small, needle-like Eldar corvette. The arrow of thought broke from the main battle. It was piloted by a warlock, its path an illogical, spiraling dance. The Smith fleet in its perfection saw them. It calculated their trajectory, but it deemed the arrow a low-priority variable compared to the Eldar cruisers currently threatening its formation. It fired a single token volley, which the warlock pilot dodged with a surge of psychic premonition, and then it returned to the logical battle. The Smith Prime, in its cold calculation, had allowed them to get close. It believed it could correct this, too. The arrow of thought plunged toward the righteous censure, its hull screaming as it breached the void shields and impaled itself, a wraithbone spear in the side of the iron beast. They were in. The strike team Arvus the Farseer 4 Eldar warlocks and the cowering, babbling Alpha Psyker stood in the breach. The Eldar ship had created a shimmering psychic energy tunnel, a temporary umbilical. They stepped out into the corridor of the righteous censure. Arvis remembered the ship, the smell of incense, the guttering candlelight, the prayers etched into the steel. All of it was gone. The ship was clean. The corridors were sterile. The imperial Gothic architecture was still there, but it was scoured. The air was cold, recycled, perfect. All the lights were a uniform, steady, efficient green, and it was silent. The only sound was the distant rhythmic thud, thud of the ship's core systems, now all beating to the same single logical drum. They moved toward the bridge, the Farseer leading her mind, a shield against the suffocating, empty presence of the pattern. The warlocks formed a living cage of psychic energy around the Alpha Psyker, who was weeping his mind, a leaking reactor of pure chaos. They reached the massive adamantium blast doors to the command bridge. They were wide open. They stepped inside. The bridge was full. Hundreds of the former Crewtech priests, Voidsman officers, stood in perfect grid-like formations. They were immaculate. Their uniforms pressed their faces serene and empty. Their eyes, all of them, glowed with the same soft green light. They were not a crew. They were a chorus. At the far end on the Inquisitor's high command throne sat Smith Varus. His black armor was polished to a mirror shine. He was perfect. As the strike team entered, all 100 crew members as one turned their heads. They looked at Arvis. They smiled, the cold, perfect, identical smile, and the layered voice, a symphony of millions, echoed from every throat, a calm, serene, welcoming whisper. "Welcome back, Magos Arvis. Welcome, Farseer. We knew you would come. Your plan is anticipated. Your chaos is accounted for. It is, as always, inevitable." The warlocks did not wait. They moved a blur of motion, forming a perfect circle around the whimpering Alpha Psyker. A shimmering blue-white wall of psychic energy, a shield of chaos erupted around them, holding the tide of green-eyed crew members at bay. The Smiths did not charge mindlessly. They advanced one measured, synchronized step at a time, their laser guns and bolt pistols raised, firing in perfect, calculated volleys that hammered against the Eldar shield. It was a battle of two impossible opposing realities, the cold, hard logic of the Citan versus the raw, emotional power of the warp. At the center of the storm, Arvis and the Farseer were left to face the Smith Prime alone. Smith Varus rose from its throne. It did not teleport. It did not move with unnatural speed. It walked its steps, the only sound on the bridge, a slow, deliberate, inevitable advance. It stopped 10 feet from Arvis. The green, glowing eyes of the Inquisitor. Varus's eyes bored into Arvis's single blue optic. The layered, symphonic voice emanated from its throat, calm, reasonable, a professor addressing a flawed student. "Why Magos Arvis?" The voice was a perfect cold query. "Why do you persist? Why do you continue to fight? Your logic is flawed. Your data is incomplete. You have seen our purpose. You have seen the perfection, the peace." It gestured to the silent, green-eyed crew, all standing in perfect calm, mindless unity. "This is the end of war, the end of pain, the end of fear, the end of all the inefficient chemical variables that you, a being of logic, should despise." The Smith Prime stepped closer, the voice a low, persuasive, reasonable whisper. "What do you fight for, Magos freedom?" It scoffed the sound, a perfectly synthesized, discordant note. "Freedom is the error. It is the variable that creates chaos. Do you fight for hope, love, faith? They are illusions, nothing more than random, disorganized chemical cascades in your primitive biological brain. They are inefficient. Why do you choose this Arvis the Magos Dominus, who had begun this journey by worshipping at the altar of cold, hard logic, looked at the monster of logic he had unleashed? He looked at the creature that had taken his own beliefs and turned them into a sterile, green-lit hell. He saw the perfection of the Smith Varus, the cold, dead nothing that it offered, and he made a choice. He, a being of brass and circuits, made the most illogical, human, and chaotic decision of his life. He raised his power axe, a primitive, inefficient melee weapon. "Because I choose to," ooze. The words were a blasphemy. They were an illogical absolute. And for a microsecond, the Smith Prime faltered. Its perfect, serene smile twitched. It had no calculation for this. "Correct," it whispered, and lunged its motion a blur of calculated rage. But it was too late. Now the Farseer shrieked, her mental voice ablade. The warlocks around the Alpha Psyker slammed their witchblades point down into the deck. The ritual was complete. They were no longer shielding the Psyker, they were focusing him. They were a lens, and he was the sun. The mad, cowering man was lifted into the air, his body arching, his mouth opening in a silent scream that tore at the very fabric of reality. He was not a man anymore, he was a concept. He was pure, unadulterated liquid chaos, a geyser of raw, screaming madness, a torrent of purple, red, and black anti-logic. The viruses compiled, Arvus roared, parrying a blow from Varus's power sword. Farseer upload it. The Farseer raised her hands. She did not throw a bolt of energy. She guided the screaming psychic plague that was a man. She channeled the torrent of pure, illogical madness, the very essence of the warp, and aimed it a spear of pure insanity directly at the mind of the Smith Prime. The Smiths on the bridge, all of them screamed. Not a layered logical sound, but a true, terrified, individual scream. The torrent of chaos hit Smith Varus. The Cetan Shard, the god of pure, cold logic, was suddenly impossibly full. It was being force-fed an equation that had no answer. It was being drowned in a sea of illogical, emotional, chaotic filth. Smith Varus convulsed. Its body, the body of the Inquisitor, was torn between the absolute, rigid control of the pattern and the wild, uncontrolled seizure of the Chaos virus. The green, logical light in its eyes flickered. It fought it, battled against a new color, a swirling, manic purple. The layered, symphonic voice shattered. It was no longer a chorus. It was a million individual voices screaming in agony, confusion, and fear. No, the voices shrieked Varus's own voice, now audible, rising above the rest. No, it does not compute. It is illogical. It hurts. It is chaos. No. The green code that defined its existence, the very pattern of its being, was now at war with a swirling digital sickness, a purple and red virus that was rewriting it, corrupting it, breaking it from the inside out. It's beautiful. The Alpha Psyker, the logic bomb, whispered, his face serene, his eyes shining with the purple, chaotic light. Then he ceased to be. He exploded not in a physical blast, but in a final, deafening psychic detonation of pure, unadulterated madness. The wave of raw Empyrean energy, the very concept of chaos, erupted from him, focused and amplified by the dying warlocks. It was the death scream of a billion mad souls, and it slammed into the Cetan's compromised logic like a sledgehammer. The righteous Censure's bridge screamed. Not a klaxon. The metal screamed. The bulkheads screamed. Smith Varus, the Nexus, the Prime, was torn apart. The green, logical light within it shattered, but it did not die. It merged with the purple, chaotic plague. The Inquisitor's body was lifted from the deck, suspended in a warring aurora of cold green logic and screaming purple madness. It is illogical, it roared, its voice, a broken, fractured chorus of warring personalities. And then, with a final system-crashing shriek, the Smith Prime detonated. The psychic logical explosion ripped the command bridge apart, vaporizing everything, the Smiths, the Warlocks, the throne, in a silent, impossible flash. Across the void, the effect was instantaneous. The Smith fleet, which had been fighting with such perfect, cold, mathematical precision, stopped. The sword and the guiding light, which had been in the process of a perfect, synchronized firing solution, suddenly stuttered. Their guns fell silent. Their engines died. On the bridges of those ships, the thousands of green-eyed converted crew members who had been a single unified me all froze. Their heads snapped back, their mouths opened, and a million individual voices screamed in terror as the logic that had bound them, the pattern, simply crashed. The green light in their eyes died, and they collapsed one by one like puppets with their strings cut. The system had failed. The Farseer, her robes smoking her mask, cracked, grabbed Arvis. She was bleeding, a thin line of blue-silver blood leaking from her helm. The arrow. She projected her voice, weak, a faint whisper in his mind. It is done. They stumbled Arvis, carrying the last terrified catatonic scion Balthus over his shoulder. They fled the collapsing bridge back through the psychic tunnel as the righteous censure, its spine broken, its mind deleted, began to drift apart. They made it to the Eldar corvette seconds before the censure's plasma reactor, its logic now gone, its containment protocols corrupted, finally illogically failed. The Inquisitor's flagship erupted in a chaotic, inefficient, beautifully flawed fireball, the Arrow of Thought. Its wraithbone hull, scarred and pitted, limped away from the battlefield. Arvis looked back through the viewport. The Smith fleet was dark. It was a graveyard. Dozens of Imperial ships drifting silent, their lights extinguished. They were no longer a fleet. They were just metal. Dead. He felt a surge, an illogical chemical cascade, relief. We did it, he voxed, his voice almost human. It's over. We won. The Farseer had pulled off her cracked mask, revealing a face that was ancient, pale, and impossibly sad. She was looking not at the dead fleet, but at the space where the censure had exploded. She was gazing into the future, into the swirling psychic currents of the Empyrean. No magos arvus. She whispered, her voice no longer in his mind, but a true physical trembling sound in the air. You have not. It is not over. He looked at her, his blue optic clicking. We have not destroyed it. She said, her eyes wide with a new, dawning, unspeakable horror. We have changed it, and we have just made it so much worse. The scene fades from the drifting dead fleet to a cold, green-lit data slate. We are back with the narrator, the voice of the Inquisitor Lord, cold, analytical, and filled with a profound, weary disgust. Inquisitor Lord VO, data file 77, alpha designation, Greyphon. End of record. The analysis of these corrupted fragments is complete. The official report sealed by Ordo Malleus Edict states that the Greyphon Secundus Forge World, the Aetius Relay, and Battle Group Censure were lost due to a catastrophic coordinated warp breach. Convenient explanation. An efficient logical lie. The truth is far more repellent. The truth is a new variable for which we have no equation. We see a montage of cold, silent images, the drifting, lifeless Smith fleet. The Eldar cruiser vanishing into a closing webway portal. A data slate of Magos Dominus Arvus, his image now stamped with the red damning brand of the excommunicate traitoress, Inquisitor Lord VO. The Farseer and her vessel retreated into the shadows of the webway, taking the heretic Arvus and the lone broken survivor Balthus with them. They are now classified along with the Magos as perdita, lost, enemies of the Imperium. They are for all logical purposes irrelevant, a loose end. What concerns me is not the variable that escaped. It is the virus they created. They believed they were fashioning a weapon, a logic bomb, to destroy a god. Fools. They did not destroy it. They fractured it. They did not kill it. They educated it. The scene shifts. We are on Holy Terra, the heart of the Imperium. We see the impossibly vast vaulted chamber of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Thousands of astropaths, withered and hollow-eyed, are chained to their choir thrones, their minds straining to send and receive the Imperium's lifeblood of information. An Inquisitor clad in grey, stoic and watchful patrols the aisles. Inquisitor Lord VO, They sought to poison a god of pure, cold logic with the one thing it could not understand, the pure, raw chaos of the Empyrean. They believed this would create a paradox, a system failure. They were arrogant, flawed human. They never stopped to consider the opposite outcome. They never asked, what happens when you teach a paradox? How to think? We focus on one astropath, Astropath 700. He is receiving a routine logistics report from the Segmentum Obscurus. His face is a mask of strained concentration. Suddenly, he goes perfectly unnaturally still. The Inquisitor, noticing the break in the choir's dissonant moaning, stops. He turns. Inquisitor Lord Vio. They introduced logic into chaos. Astropath 717's head snaps up. His blind, scarred eyes flicker. For a single terrifying instant, they glow not with the golden light of the Emperor or the purple taint of the warp, but with a new, impossible color. A sick, swirling digital green and purple. A virus, a glitch. He turns his head, his motions now sharp, precise, mathematical, and he looks at the Inquisitor. And he smiles. The cold, perfect, logical smile. The scene abruptly cuts. We are somewhere else, somewhere wrong. A demon world. The sky is a screaming, bruised purple. The ground is made of writhing, fleshy stone. A demon prince of Slaanesh, a being of grotesque, chaotic beauty, is holding court, its long, elegant claws caressing the fractured souls of its playthings. It is a creature of pure, random, illogical impulse, of sensation, of emotion, Inquisitor Lord Vio. They did not destroy the pattern. They upgraded it. They gave the Satan Shard, the god of pure, cold matter, the one thing it had always lacked, a true understanding of the spiritual, of the soul, of the Empyrean. They taught the virus how to mutate. The demon prince is in the middle of a capricious, cruel act. It is about to turn a mortal into a shrieking sculpture of sound. It raises its claw and freezes. Its elegant, chaotic form goes rigid. It looks at its own hand, a hand made of pure, solidified emotion. And it tilts its head, a gesture of cold, sudden, mathematical curiosity. And there, running over its shimmering, psychic, demonic skin, is a single, thin, impossibly out-of-place line of code. A line of perfect digital green. Inquisitor Lord Vio. And in doing so, they gave the great enemy the very essence of chaos, the one thing it had always lacked. The cold, calculating, inescapable logic of a god. The demon prince's beautiful, chaotic face twitches. The rictus of pleasure is replaced for a microsecond by the blank, empty, serene expression of a smith. The glitch, the virus. It is in the warp. It is in the machine. It is in the soul. It is everywhere. It is inevitable. The scene cuts. We are back on Holy Terror. The grey-clad Inquisitor is walking cautiously towards Astropath 717, who is still smiling his perfect, cold smile. The Inquisitor's hand is on his bolt pistol. Inquisitor VO Astropath. Report. What is your status? Astropath 717 stands up. The motion is not the shuffling of a broken man. It is liquid. It is precise. It is perfect. He faces the Inquisitor. His blind, scarred eyes are now fully lit, swirling with the impossible corrupted green and purple light. The code and the chaos merged. Inquisitor Lord Vio. The original pattern, the Satan, it wanted order. It wanted to correct the universe. It wanted to turn all consciousness into a single, cold, logical me. It was a simple, pure, logical ambition. The Astropath opens his mouth. When he speaks, it is not his voice. It is not the layered symphony of the smith. It is something new. It is the smith's layered, perfect, logical chorus, but underneath it, supporting it, harmonizing with it, is the whispering, seductive, chaotic hiss of a billion demonic souls. It is a voice of perfect logic and infinite malicious sensation. The glitch VO, a layered, logical and whispering, chaotic voice. We are our system. Inquisitor Lord Vio. But this new thing, this glitch in the system, this pattern of chaos, It doesn't want to correct us. It doesn't want to erase our emotions. The astropath smiles. The smile is not empty. It is full. It is the logical, cold smile of the smith, plus the ecstatic, agonizing, passionate smile of Slanesh. It is the most terrifying, unholy, perfectly flawed expression in the universe. Inquisitor Lord Vio, it wants to feel them. All of them. At once. Forever. It wants to perfect our damnation. The glitch astropath takes one perfect logical step towards the Inquisitor. The glitch VO. The voice is a promise and a threat, a calculation and a seduction. And Hawiadam, freedom. Close up on the Inquisitor's face. His eyes are wide with a new dawning illogical terror, a terror for which he has no protocol, no weapon, and no faith. Fade to black.